Did you think knights were the only big shots in medieval times? Ever wonder who really kept those castles running while the knights were off playing war games? Number 7. The village miller, power broker of peasant life. Imagine controlling the one machine that turns grain into edible food for an entire community. That's exactly what the medieval miller did. Standing at the critical junction between hunger and sustenance, millers wielded surprising power in medieval society. The mill wasn't just some boring building on the edge of town, it was basically the medieval equivalent of a power plant. Water mills represented cutting-edge technology, harnessing natural energy to perform work that would otherwise require dozens of human hands. The miller didn't just grind grain, he operated the most complex machine most medieval people would ever encounter. But here's the juicy part: millers had a seriously shady reputation. The miller collected fees for grinding grain, typically taking a percentage of the flour as payment, a practice that was ripe for abuse. With flour dust flying everywhere, who could really tell exactly how much flour your grain had produced? Many millers were accused of having suspiciously heavy thumbs when it came to weighing their cut. "The miller has a golden thumb" wasn't a compliment, it was a medieval burn suggesting the miller was skimming extra profits. In Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, the miller is portrayed as a red-haired, wide-mouthed brute who steals corn and charges 3 times the going rate. Subtle, Geoffrey. Yet villages couldn't function without their millers. They were essential workers before essential workers was a thing. Many mills were owned by local lords who appointed trusted millers, giving these grain-grinding gurus political connections that enhanced their standing. With a combination of technical know-how, economic leverage, and political backing, millers enjoyed a social status far above the typical peasant. The miller's home was often attached to the mill itself, a rare example of a workplace and home being the same in medieval society. This meant millers lived in larger, more substantial buildings than most of their neighbors. Plus, with all those grain payments coming in, millers rarely worried about food security. In a time when famine lurked around every corner, that alone made the miller's position enviable. Next time you grab a loaf of bread, pour some out for the medieval miller, the surprisingly powerful, notoriously sketchy character who kept medieval Europe fed even while helping himself to a little extra on the side. Number 6. The town midwife, between magic and medicine. Ever wondered who delivered babies when hospitals didn't exist? What if the person bringing new life into the world was considered both essential and suspicious at the same time? Medieval midwives occupied one of the most precarious yet powerful positions in society. These women, and they were almost exclusively women, straddled the dangerous line between respected healer and suspected witch. Midwives didn't just deliver babies, though that alone was a high-stakes responsibility. They served as general women's health practitioners, provided contraceptive advice, treated infertility, and cared for newborns. Many midwives prepared herbal remedies and performed basic medical procedures that male physicians would never be allowed to do for female patients. What made midwives unique was their intimate knowledge of female bodies at a time when such knowledge was both necessary and vaguely threatening to the male-dominated church and medical establishment. Their expertise wasn't learned from books, most were illiterate anyway, but passed down through apprenticeship from one generation of women to the next. Medieval society relied on midwives completely for childbirth. Even noblewomen called on midwives rather than male physicians when their time came. For a woman in labor, the midwife's skills could literally mean the difference between life and death. Successful midwives gained tremendous respect and wielded significant influence in their communities. But their position came with serious risks. The same knowledge that made midwives valuable also made them vulnerable to accusations of witchcraft. A midwife who knew how to ease pain during childbirth might be suspected of dark magic. One who provided herbs to prevent pregnancy could be accused of immoral conduct. If too many babies died under a midwife's care, common in an age of high infant mortality, rumors of malevolent intentions might spread. By the late medieval period, midwives became increasingly regulated. Many towns required midwives to be licensed and take oaths promising not to use magic, harm mother or child, or dispose of unwanted infants. These regulations reflected both the importance of midwives and the suspicion under which they operated. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the medieval midwife was her role in community gossip networks. Midwives knew who was pregnant before anyone else, could testify to a child's parentage in disputed cases, and were privy to family secrets revealed during the intense vulnerability of childbirth. This made midwives powerful keepers of social knowledge. In a world before modern medicine, these women served as the guardians of life's beginning. Their hands were the first to touch countless medieval people, from peasants to kings. Yet history has largely forgotten their names and faces, leaving only glimpses of these women who brought new life into the world armed with nothing but experience, herbal knowledge, and courage. Number 5. The traveling minstrel, medieval media mogul. Did you know medieval people had their own version of pop stars? How did news travel in a world without phones, internet, or even newspapers? Enter the medieval minstrel, part musician, part journalist, part propagandist, and completely essential to medieval information networks. Long before social media influencers, minstrels shaped public opinion and spread the latest hits across the medieval world. Minstrels didn't just play catchy tunes on lutes and pipes. They were walking, singing newspapers who carried tales of distant battles, royal scandals, and local gossip from town to town. In an age when most people never traveled more than 20 miles from their birthplace, minstrels brought the wider world to isolated communities. These musical travelers enjoyed unusual freedom in a society otherwise defined by rigid hierarchies. Minstrels crossed boundaries of class, region, and even language with remarkable ease. They might perform in a peasant tavern one night and a nobleman's hall the next. Some particularly talented minstrels became celebrities attached to royal courts, while others remained wandering freelancers, selling songs and stories wherever they could find an audience. The content of their performances reveals how central minstrels were to medieval culture. Their repertoire included epic tales of heroic deeds, romantic ballads, religious stories, and ribald comedy that would make modern ears blush. Minstrels adapted their material to suit each audience, playing political propaganda in noble houses and bawdy jokes in taverns. Minstrels also served as crucial political tools. During the Crusades, minstrels spread songs glorifying Crusader achievements across Europe, helping to recruit new warriors and secure funding for these massive military expeditions. During the 100 Years' War, English and French minstrels crafted competing narratives of battlefield events, medieval spin doctors massaging the facts to favor their patrons. Not everyone appreciated the minstrel's craft. Church authorities frequently condemned them for spreading immoral tales and distracting people from religious devotion. One medieval French bishop complained that people would run to entertainers as flies to honey, neglecting their spiritual duties. Despite clerical disapproval, minstrels remained popular because they provided something medieval society desperately needed: entertainment. Life was hard, work was constant, and diversions were few. When a minstrel arrived in town with new songs and stories, it was a genuine event. Imagine the excitement of hearing about a royal wedding, a great battle, or a scandalous affair, all set to music you could dance to. The physical appearance of minstrels often marked them as outsiders. Many adopted distinctive clothing styles with bright colors and unusual accessories that signaled their profession. This visual branding made them immediately recognizable, but also reinforced their status as people who existed somewhat outside normal social categories. Minstrels transmitted not just news but culture itself. Folk traditions, linguistic innovations, and musical styles traveled along the routes these performers established. The minstrel tradition eventually evolved into more specialized forms: actors, musicians, jesters, but for much of the medieval period, these multi-talented performers remained the primary medium through which most people experienced art, news, and entertainment. Number 4. The Jewish moneylender, financial backbone in a hostile world. What happens when your religion becomes your job? How would you survive if you were only allowed one profession in a society that both needed and despised you? Medieval Jewish moneylenders lived this contradiction every day, providing essential financial services in communities that subjected them to severe restrictions and periodic violence. The story begins with a theological twist. Christian teachings prohibited usury, lending money at interest among Christians. However, growing trade networks and economic development in the High Middle Ages created an urgent need for credit. This religious prohibition created an economic opportunity for Jewish residents who were allowed to lend money at interest to Christians, though not to fellow Jews. What started as a religious loophole became a confined economic niche. As medieval European societies increasingly restricted Jewish participation in crafts, guilds, and landowning, moneylending became one of the few legal ways for Jewish communities to support themselves. By the 12th century, Jewish moneylenders operated throughout Europe, providing loans to everyone from peasants needing seed for planting to kings financing wars. These financial arrangements created a painfully vulnerable position. Moneylenders were simultaneously necessary and resented. Knights preparing for crusades often borrowed from Jewish lenders to finance their equipment, then attacked Jewish communities before departing, a convenient way to erase their debts. Kings regularly taxed Jewish communities at extortionate rates, essentially using them as indirect tax collectors who could absorb public hatred while filling royal treasuries. The business itself required detailed record-keeping and financial sophistication. Medieval Jewish moneylenders developed complex accounting systems and legal documents centuries before modern banking. They created financial instruments that allowed trade to flourish across language barriers and political boundaries. Many historians credit these medieval Jewish financial innovations with laying groundwork for later European economic development. Daily life for these financial specialists was marked by insecurity. Most medieval European cities confined Jewish residents to specific neighborhoods, the origin of Jewish ghettos. Special clothing or badges were required in many regions to mark Jewish residents visually. Despite these restrictions, many Jewish moneylenders achieved significant wealth, which allowed their communities to maintain schools, synagogues, and charitable institutions. When financial troubles hit medieval societies, Jewish moneylenders often became scapegoats. The Black Death was blamed on alleged Jewish poisoning of wells. Poor harvests triggered accusations of Jewish sorcery. Economic downturns led to claims that Jewish financial practices were undermining society. These accusations frequently led to violence, confiscation of property, or expulsion. England, France, Spain, and numerous German states expelled their Jewish populations during various periods of the Middle Ages. Behind the stereotype of the Jewish moneylender were real individuals navigating a nearly impossible social position, providing essential services to people who might turn on them at any moment. These medieval financial specialists maintained intellectual and religious traditions under extraordinary pressure while developing expertise that would help shape modern economic systems. Number 3. The manuscript illuminator, medieval visual storytellers. Have you ever seen colors so vibrant they've survived over 800 years? What does it take to create art so detailed you need a magnifying glass to see all its features? Medieval manuscript illuminators were the graphic designers, illustrators, and visual storytellers of their age, creating dazzling artworks in books when most people couldn't read. Their paintings on parchment captured medieval imagination and documented life in ways written words never could. The term illuminator comes from the Latin illuminare, to light up, referring to how these artists literally brightened manuscripts with gold, silver, and brilliant pigments. Working before the invention of printing, illuminators decorated handwritten books with everything from elaborate initial letters to full-page narrative scenes. The materials themselves were extraordinary. Ultramarine blue came from lapis lazuli mined in Afghanistan, literally worth more than its weight in gold. Red came from insects harvested in Mexico and the Mediterranean. Gold leaf was pounded so thin you could see through it, then carefully applied to create surfaces that still catch light and appear to glow after centuries. Being an illuminator required incredible patience. A single elaborate page might take weeks to complete, with artists working hunched over desks using brushes sometimes made from just a few squirrel hairs. Mistakes couldn't be erased. One slip of the hand could ruin months of work. Many illuminators developed vision problems or hunched backs from years of detailed close work. Most illuminators remain anonymous. Unlike famous painters of later periods, these artists rarely signed their work, considering themselves craftspeople rather than creative geniuses. Historians can sometimes identify individual artists by their distinctive styles, giving them nicknames like the Master of Mary of Burgundy or the Bedford Master when their actual names have been lost to history. Women played a significant role in manuscript illumination, particularly in convents where nuns produced remarkable illuminated texts. And a female Spanish illuminator from the 10th century boldly signed her work End, Painter and Servant of God. Other female illuminators remain hidden in historical records that often only documented male artists. What makes medieval illuminations so fascinating is their window into medieval life. While the texts were often religious, the illustrations frequently showed contemporary scenes, giving us rare glimpses of medieval clothing, architecture, furniture, and daily activities. An illuminator painting the biblical story of Noah's Ark might show Noah's wife wearing 13th century French fashion or depict farm tools exactly as they were used in the artist's own village. The humor found in many manuscript margins reveals medieval people weren't the dour, superstitious figures often portrayed in modern media. Illuminators decorated margins with absurd images, rabbits hunting humans, monkeys performing as doctors, bottom-bearing peasants, and other surprisingly risque scenes. These marginalia suggest medieval readers enjoyed visual jokes alongside serious religious texts. As printing technology spread in the 15th century, the illuminator's craft faced extinction. Some adapted by coloring printed books, but the golden age of handmade, individualized book art was ending. Today, surviving illuminated manuscripts are among our most precious connections to medieval visual culture, all thanks to artists who spent their lives hunched over parchment, painting tiny masterpieces one brushstroke at a time. Number 2, the urban bathhouse keeper, steward of cleanliness and controversy. Think medieval people never bathed. Convinced the Middle Ages was just one long, smelly millennium. What if everything you thought about medieval hygiene was completely wrong? Medieval bathhouse keepers ran establishments that were part spa, part social club, and occasionally part brothel, businesses that reveal surprising truths about cleanliness, sexuality, and social life in medieval towns. Contrary to popular belief, medieval Europeans were quite concerned with personal cleanliness. Public bathhouses flourished in towns and cities across Europe, particularly from the 12th to 15th centuries. These establishments offered hot water bathing at a time when heating water at home required significant labor and expense. Bathhouses became essential urban institutions, used by people from almost all social classes. Running a bathhouse was a regulated profession. Many towns required bathhouse keepers to obtain licenses and follow specific rules about water quality, pricing, and operating hours. The most successful bathhouse keepers became wealthy figures who occupied respected positions in urban business communities. The typical medieval bathhouse contained wooden tubs for individual bathing and larger communal pools for shared bathing experiences. Many offered steam rooms similar to modern saunas. Attendants provided services including massage, hair washing, beard trimming, and cupping, a medical treatment involving heated cups placed on the skin. Some even offered medical treatments like bloodletting, making bathhouses important health centers. For many medieval people, bathhouses were primarily social spaces. Men conducted business discussions while bathing. Women socialized with female friends away from the constraints of home. Some bathhouses were segregated by gender, with women admitted on certain days and men on others. Others allowed mixed bathing, a practice that increasingly concerned church authorities as centuries passed. The moral ambiguity of bathhouses created constant tension. While primarily intended for legitimate bathing, some bathhouses also facilitated prostitution or served as meeting places for illicit affairs. Bathhouse keepers walked a precarious line between providing acceptable services and catering to human desires that religious authorities condemned. By the late medieval period, bathhouses faced increasing restrictions. Syphilis outbreaks in the late 15th century led many towns to close bathhouses entirely, fearing they spread disease. Rising religious concerns about immorality and nudity also contributed to their decline. Many bathhouse keepers found their once respected profession increasingly viewed with suspicion. Intriguingly, bathhouse culture varied significantly across Europe. In German-speaking regions, the Badestube remained a respectable institution focused on cleanliness and health treatments. In some French and Italian regions, bathhouses developed more questionable reputations. In areas with significant Muslim or Jewish influence, ritual cleanliness traditions supported thriving bathhouse businesses that followed religious purification rules. The most successful bathhouse keepers offered numerous amenities beyond just bathing. Many served food and drink, provided entertainment like music or storytelling, and created environments that encouraged customers to stay for hours. In essence, they operated the medieval equivalent of modern spas and social clubs combined. The decline of public bathhouses by the 16th century didn't mean people stopped bathing, contrary to popular misconceptions. Rather, bathing became more private, with wealthy households integrating bathing spaces into homes and less affluent people using rivers, lakes, or simple home setups. The communal bathing tradition didn't disappear completely. It evolved into the spa towns and bath tourism that became popular in later centuries. Number 1. The elderly peasant, walking encyclopedia of rural knowledge. Ever met someone who can predict tomorrow's weather by looking at how animals behave today? What if your survival literally depended on the memories of the oldest person in your village? Medieval elderly peasants weren't just waiting around to die, they were living libraries containing critical knowledge that kept entire communities alive. In a world before Google, these senior citizens provided the search results that mattered most. The stereotype of medieval life as nasty, brutish, and short leaves little room for old age, but historical records tell a different story. While average life expectancy was indeed lower than today, this figure was dramatically skewed by high infant and child mortality. People who survived childhood diseases, accidents, and warfare could and did reach their 60s, 70s, and occasionally beyond. Elderly peasants possessed irreplaceable practical knowledge. They remembered which wild plants were edible during famines, which herbs treated specific ailments, and where to find water during droughts. They recalled weather patterns stretching back decades, crucial information for agricultural planning. Most importantly, they remembered previous crises and how their communities had survived them. The older peasant's role as legal memory was especially valuable in an illiterate society. With few written property records, elderly villagers testified about land boundaries, inheritance rights, and customary practices during disputes. Their memories served as living property deeds and legal documents. When lords attempted to increase labor obligations, elderly peasants could authoritatively state, "It's never been done that way before," a powerful argument in a tradition-based society. Agricultural expertise made elderly peasants particularly valuable. Knowing exactly when to plant based on subtle environmental cues could mean the difference between harvest and hunger. Understanding animal behavior, predicting weather changes, and recognizing early signs of crop diseases were skills refined over decades. Young farmers relied on this knowledge being passed down through practical demonstration and oral instruction. Grandparents played crucial childcare roles that kept medieval families functioning. With parents working long hours in fields or at crafts, elderly family members supervised children, prepared food, and maintained households. This multi-generational childcare system allowed medieval women to participate in agricultural labor while ensuring children remained safe. Social authority often increased with age in peasant communities. Village elders mediated disputes, advised on community decisions, and represented village interests when dealing with local lords or church officials. Their experience navigating power structures and social conflicts made them valuable community leaders even as their physical strength declined. Not all aspects of peasant old age were positive. Physical disabilities from decades of hard labor made many elderly peasants dependent on family support. Those without family networks faced potential destitution. Some communities maintained widows' cottages where elderly residents could live with minimal support, a medieval version of elder care. Religious life often intensified for elderly peasants as physical work became impossible. Many devoted increased time to prayer, church attendance, and religious instruction of younger generations. For those who believed in the afterlife, as most medieval people did, this spiritual focus offered meaningful purpose during life's final chapter. Perhaps most significantly, elderly peasants served as the primary storytellers in medieval villages. Their tales, songs, and proverbs transmitted cultural values, practical wisdom, and community identity to younger generations. Many folk traditions, agricultural practices, and rural customs survived centuries precisely because elderly peasants passed them down through stories told around evening fires. Have you ever considered that the most essential medieval people might have been those who never appeared in the history books at all? What untold stories might still be waiting for us to discover?